Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the neighborhood and welcome back to your friendly neighborhood comic show. I'm your host, Laura, your friendly neighborhood bye. And as you can tell, we're chatting with another indie creator here. And actually, he is more than just an indie creator. He's an indie founder, artist, 10 other labels, it seems like. But please welcome Marcus Jimenez. How are you, Marcus?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Good. Yeah, no, again, it's my pleasure. I was so happy we got to do this so quickly because half the time I'll just shoot my shot when I see good stuff on Twitter. I'll be like, hey, your stuff's great. Can I talk to you about it?
I try to keep myself available for podcasts and stuff, so I'm happy to be on.
Awesome. Yeah, well, again, I was just so excited. Before I start asking questions, I'd love if you could just share a little about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a writer and an artist and the publisher at Dauntless Stories. So Dauntless Stories is we call ourselves like a boutique indie comics publisher. So we focus on telling novellas and one-shots that, you can pick up on a Sunday afternoon, read the whole thing, have a great time, and, keep it on your shelf. We focus on, doing perfect bound and hardcover copies that are limited edition. That way you can kind of build your own collection of our work. We've worked with creators like Frankie White, Brent Fisher, Sally Lockhart, a ton of great artists and writers. Right now we have a program called Greenlight, which is basically our on website Kickstarter in a sense where like you can pre-order the book and it's a crowdfunding aspect for a 9-issue series that we're doing called From Within, which is like a martial arts tournament kind of book. So it's a lot of fun stuff like that. We always try to we like to say we're trying to push the boundaries up where we can when it comes to comic book storytelling. That's a direct quote from Comic Book Resources. But that's me in a nutshell.
No, that's so awesome. I really like that the specific approach that you take with Dauntless. The fact that you are focusing on, collected, it's one story, here you go kind of thing. Because sometimes I think that's one thing that can be hard with comics is sometimes if you've had something that's gone on forever or connects to 200 other things, it feels like it's unattainable as a reader to get into and actually really enjoy without feeling overwhelmed. So I've noticed a lot of the stuff you do as well. Your genres that you have in there are pretty diverse. You've got your straight sci-fi, you've got fantasy, you've got more of the dark psychological horror stuff. Is that intentional to kind of include such broad genres?
Yes. So my favorite genres are always like fantasy, sci-fi, horror. Like those are my favorite things. And then I love superheroes, but I feel like the genre is very oversaturated when it comes to superhero books. So I try to. Our main thing is if you look at a comic book movie like Logan, right, or Captain America: Winter Soldier. You take the blend of the comic book storytelling and blend it with another genre. And those most times the best stories that we get from comic book movies. So we kind of taken that approach with the books that we make. And we want them to like embed one genre with another and really surprise the audience with it. So when you see Eat My Flesh, it's like, a horror book on the outside and in the inside. It's
very much.
But at the core of it, Frankie pitched it as a romance story, like that moment in your relationship where you're not really sure where your footing is and how you build that kind of trust and love in that kind of respect. I will let you decide if it's a romance book or not when you read it, but that was a big goal of Frankie's when it came to the book.
Yeah, I think, the tagline here, the in-laws can be hell. One, that's clever. It works so well. And I don't know. Yeah, I think it starts out, that's the interesting thing is I've read this story without too many spoilers or anything. It starts out very much in, a romance style, and then it takes a shift. And then by the end, I feel like it is kind of choose your own adventure, how you decide that ending goes. Is that towards that genre or is it this way? You get to kind of pick as a reader.
Exactly. And then we wanted to keep pushing that idea with Judas Complex, right? Where at its core, it's a fantasy book. You have werewolves and secretly vampires and stuff like that. But on the surface level, it's a mystery book. Like you're seeing it. It's about a private detective, and he takes on this young kid who accidentally turned into a werewolf. And now, as the depths around his origin story starts to happen again, you know, they go on an adventure to try to solve this mystery. And it's has horror elements like Eat My Flesh that are very graphic, but at the end of the day, it's like old-fashioned procedural detective book that I love, and that's the kind of stuff I love. So that's how we approach every book on our lineup.
How does one accidentally become a werewolf? Like you just slip and go, darn, werewolf it is.
Yeah. So in the story, our main character here, his name is Desmond. Desmond is part of like a college football team. It's like set in the late 90s, right? So before a big like state championship game, one of the teammates is like, hey, here's this, you know, performance enhancing drug we should take to win the game. So they all decide to take it. Unbeknownst to them, it's a secret chemical that's going to turn you into a werewolf. And most of the other team turn into werewolves and then die. And Desmond is the only one that survives this transformation from werewolf to human.
Well, I'm not sure if that's lucky him or I'm sorry that you survived it.
Yeah, you got to read the story to see. It's really awesome. It's written by Son M and drawn by Dre Gomez. Fantastic creators. Son has a bunch of books coming out. One of them is with Penguin Random House, I believe. HarperCollins, that's what it is. And it's just phenomenal work. It's a great book.
Yeah, no, it looks great. And honestly, that's one thing I want to mention too, is that even if there's like a story here that, you know, isn't someone's cup of tea genre-wise or something, the quality in every story is so good that even if I'm like, I'm not into this genre, I still want to try it because the quality of the art, quality of stories that, you know, are being written are up here. So it's like, I may not be a huge high fantasy person, but if you write a high fantasy book, I'm going to go grab and give it a shot.
Exactly. That's always the goal with it, is really pushing what can we do with every genre and what can we tell with every story is what we want to focus on. Incoming cat.
Yes. I was hoping a cat would invade.
Not today, Sonny. There we go.
So I did hear a little bit about the ones that you have done, the ones that you created, the ones that, you know, because this is, you know, even though this is very much, you know, people get to flourish within the brand and publisher name, you started it. So, you know, tell us about these, like Deadly Living, The Whole World Blind, Techno Nights. They all sound like 20 different genres.
They're all completely different genres. So Deadly Living is the reason Dauntless Stories exists. It was a book I've tried pitching for like years, like 2 years straight. And I kept getting either rejections or people were like, we'll wait a little bit long. But then the pandemic happened and everybody was like, what do we do? So I was just like, screw it. I'm just going to go to Kickstarter. And if it's successful, we get to make the book. And if it's not, we don't make the book. Luckily, it was successful and we were able to make the book. It's like a 60-page fantasy, superheroic fantasy kind of story, right? It's been described as like X-Men in the world of Harry Potter. And
that's quite a combination.
Yeah, so it's like there's a magical world hidden beneath our own magical world, regular world, and in that magical world there's a special team like the X-Men that their job is just to prevent bad things from happening, yada yada, like, you know, X-Men style kind of thing. And when a young woman presents herself with legendary powers, it draws out them, but also a villain that's been long dormant. And it's kind of like a fun, action-packed book. Drawn by Gavin Guidry. He's done Going to the Chapel, a ton of awesome books. Addison Duke, who colors, is over at Vault. Taylor, who did letters, did DC stuff, IDW. So it's a great team that I was lucky to wrangle for this book. But the success of this one is what let me launch Dauntless, because I figured if I can go and independently crowdfund the book for myself, why do I need to go to another publisher to make it happen? So I was like, anything that I want to make for myself personally, this is my imprint. This is Dauntless. And I figured if I'm going to do that for myself, why not do it for others too? Like, give them a chance to run wild with their stories. So that's Deadly Living. The Whole World Blind is technically not a Dauntless story, but
Mhm.
it was a Kickstarter I ran with one of my close friends, Easton DeVerna, fantastic writer. Um, and he and I always throw ideas back and forth. Like he runs like 4 or 5 Kickstarters a year.
Mhm.
Really
Oh
great
god.
guy.
How does he like keep himself sane doing that? Like 2 Kickstarters a year, I feel like is enough. Like it's a lot.
Yeah, he does like 2 to 4 a year, and I'm just like, he's a machine. Like pumps them out, like keeps it going. Um, but me and him have a love for Shakespeare and stuff like that. So after playing God of War and stuff, I sent them a message one day. I was like, hey, what if we did a God of War, Game of Thrones style book just for fun, just as like a warm up, like
Mhm.
Inktober kind of thing? And he's like, let's do it even better. Inktober prompts, they're all Shakespearean themes, and we can only write and draw the page once a week.
Oh my gosh. That's
We don't know what's
insane.
we didn't know where the story was going. We did it for like 8 weeks straight, like one page a week, and every page differs in style and in writing, but cohesively tells one big story.
Ooh.
Um, so we did. It's like 40 pages.
Mhm.
A lot of fun. Everything was done to be like almost vignettes each page, but it tells a singular story as you go through, and it follows um, a man named Helios, who you see right here, and
Mhm.
his son Sebastian, who they're the protectors of this magical crystal that will grant you the thing you need to fulfill your most the thing you most desire. So for if you scroll back to the first page, I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah.
There's a king who um, wants to save his land, so he decides that he's going to go into the crystal, pull out the thing he needs to save his kingdom. But it's Helios's job to prevent that from happening.
Mm.
So, in effort to killing him, well, to protect it, uh, he ends up starting a war in the
Oh.
kingdom because there's a vacuum for power now. So
Mm.
the king's son Robert should be leading this charge, but instead, all he wants is revenge. So that's where the whole world blind kind of eye for an eye, the whole world blind.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a story about fathers and sons and love and revenge. And Easton wrote it beautifully. It actually comes with an audiobook which we're in the middle of right now.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
it was a cool idea we had where like Easton and I were writing it like a novel.
Mhm.
We were just like, might as well just do it together. So you can put it on and read it with the audiobook when it's all said and done, and just have a fantastic time all the way through.
That's cool. I've never seen that done with a comic before. And I feel like that could be cool for like a comic, like much more so than novel. Cause like I mean I'm just imagining like the effects on the page, like the onomatopoeias or whatever, and you read this out loud. Like it'd be ridiculous, but I think it could add to the fun of reading it.
Yeah, and the cool thing is we wanted it to sound like old like British voice, so we got an older British man to voice the whole book. So when
That's
you hear
amazing.
it, it sounds like it's like Game of Thronesy and stuff like that. And what's awesome is that there's people that can't visually picture things in their head. So when they get to follow the book along with the audiobook, it's providing that imagery for them to really get the full experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Really
I know
fun thing.
hard thing with audiobooks is that they do take a while, but I think that
Yeah.
could be really cool to potentially make them even more accessible. I like that you guys are doing that. And you guys are the first I've heard to do it, so as my your first should do it. Woohoo.
Very fun thing. Um, and then last one, Technonites.
Yes.
My good friend Travis and I have an obsession with Power Rangers.
Uh-huh.
So we were like, how do we tell our own Power Ranger story? Funny enough, him and I had inkling of the same idea
Oh.
in different forms. And I know this idea is, Power Rangers, they're teenagers, right? They're
Hmm.
set out into this ultimate war to save the world. So what happens after they save the world? Like what happens to them 10 years later, 20 years
Hmm.
later? So the story takes place 12 to 15 years later. Now they're all adults. They have families. They're in their
Hmm.
careers. They're doing all this. And they're getting called back into action, but at the core of it, it's like, how do these they're the three there's three of the brothers, Archie, which is the blue one, Theo, which is the green one, and Hayron, who's the yellow one, who they're all ready to jump right back in, right? They want to save the world again. They want to relive their childhood. Where Tessie, the red Technoknight, he is very much like, we were child soldiers, and that was the worst thing that could have ever happened to us as kids, and he has to reconcile with that going forward. So I'm in the midst of drawing this one right now. It was originally supposed to be a 48-page book, and we made it longer. So it's taking me a longer time to make it. But this is my second book that I've drawn, my second graphic novel that I've drawn all the way through. So
it looks fantastic. And honestly, I think that's a way better sign if the book is extended than if it's cut short. Because I've heard that too, where we're like, yeah, we shot for 40 pages, but we only could do 30, which again, you know, not any blame there. There's all kinds of reasons that happens. It's just like, dang, that kind of stinks. So it's so cool that you guys were, you know, not only wanting to, but able to say, let's add more on. Let's go.
Yeah. So that's actually happened twice with us. Judas Complex was also supposed to be like a 50-page book, and they ended up adding like 26 pages to the book, like a whole extra issue, right? So it's a 76-page book. But I think it comes down to when the creators of the book both have a genuine love for it, and it's not about making money, but it's about making something like a product that they want to enjoy as much as they want the readers to enjoy. I think you end up in a situation where they're like, screw it, we'll do more work just because we want to make sure it's the best story possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that you're, you know, these books you're so often able to add on to, and I mean, these really seem like Dauntless books. Like they live up to your name that you've given them.
It's a fun time. When we do a green light, which this one was, it's basically same thing as a Kickstarter. The only promise is that even if it doesn't reach its goal, the book is getting made. Like you will have a finished product at the end of the campaign. And so with this one, with me drawing it, I was like, I don't need the extra page rate. I just want to make sure we do whatever we need to do. And it's just been a fun time the whole way through. So I'm 90% done. So hopefully it'll be out to backers soon, and then out to the public.
That's awesome. Yeah, I knew there's been some discourse in the last day or two, actually, of us recording this, of people talking about, you know, Kickstarters and things like that with crowdfunding. Like, you know, if, you know, Kickstarter, if your backer should get the product first, or can it go to stores first? And so it seems like you guys are very focused on, let's take care of the backers, then we're going to get it out there.
I can talk about this kind of stuff all day. Me personally, I think if it's Kickstarter, backers should get it first before it goes to stores. So Deadly Living, its release date coincided with the launch of Dauntless. So once it was done, we made sure to ship like 150 to 200 of them straight to backers first. I think I'm not going to call anybody out. There was a massive Kickstarter 2 years ago now, I think, from a bigger publisher that they made hundreds of thousands of dollars and decided that they were essentially going to double dip. And before they delivered the book, they were going to put it in stores. And then when the store run finished, like when that arc finished, then your volume that you paid for on the Kickstarter would be delivered to you. I backed that project initially because I was like, oh, it's very awesome. But it's kind of like the best way to explain it for anyone who's never worked behind the scenes of Kickstarter should feel like an exclusive club. If that makes sense. Or like an exclusive, I'm paying extra for the behind the scenes of the book. Like I want to see the progress that goes out. I want to see I want to get my name in the book as the backer who helped fund the book, that kind of thing. Not necessarily every book has to do that, but that's what you're paying for when you go to Kickstarter. Right. So I think doing that and then automatically putting in stores before the backers even get the first book is almost like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
That's just me personally.
Yeah. No, I personally agree. Somebody who's back Kickstarter. I mean, it's even and this doesn't feel as bad, but still kind of like surprises me when this happens. When let's say I've got my Kickstarter and I'm super happy, I've got the book's great, but then a week or two later, it's already in stores, and I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
What I could have just waited a week or two, and you have no idea, of course, because they disclose that, and it's not necessarily that they need to, but yeah, like you said, it is supposed to feel exclusive. It is supposed to feel like, yeah, I invested in this really cool freaking thing, and I'm getting a really cool reward for doing so, and that reward is significant in terms of, you know, costs at times and also time lapse. You know, like give a month or two before you throw it in stores. My gosh.
Yeah, I think the only time that I make the exception for that is we have retailer tiers. So if a
Yep.
retailer comes in at the Kickstarter level and is like, hey, I want to buy 10 copies or 50 copies,
Yeah.
then it's going to be delivered at the same time because it's all fulfilled at the same time. But I
Yeah.
think if it's like, hey, the book is being made, January comes, it's in previews, and then March, it's like you get it and previews gets it. It's like might as well just have waited until, you know, it was already in previews and then picked it up then.
Yeah.
But
No, and I think that's important because, you know, I've noticed that it seems hard to get retailers to back Kickstarters, like with those big retailers, and they do so much when they do. So I think that's totally okay to also incentivize retailers in that way. If you back the Kickstarter, you will get the books to put out just like the Kickstarter, you know, people do because they're backing the Kickstarter too. So I think that's totally fair.
yeah, I think the only yeah, I think I just had an issue with that whole shit before. But if anything, I
Yeah.
think Kickstarter, going back to Dauntless and the whole way I started this, I think Kickstarter and Crowdfunder and Zoop, they're the great equalizer. They're like, hey, anyone can make a comic book. It's just a matter of, is it something people want to buy? Which is the reality of the industry.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's interesting to see. Sometimes I see Kickstarters that get funded super quickly versus others. I'm like, why is that funding so quickly? So it's a fun, like you said, I mean, I could analyze all that all day too, right? Of like, oh, what this doing? What this doing? What's this? And who's this?
If I had to give any advice, first thing people always look for to a creator when they go to, you know, start a is, has that creator backed any Kickstarters prior? Because if, you know, they're like, if you're not going to support other people, why should we support you? That's one thing. And I think the more you do Kickstarters, the bigger your audience gets. Like the more people become familiar with your work and grow to respect it, you build a fan base that shares with other people and eventually grows. Dauntless is actually launching its, if you count that living, second Kickstarter, coming this January.
Nice.
I can't say too much about it because I'm the one writing it. But and we haven't officially announced it yet. But
exclusive.
Exclusive, yeah. It is. It's a passion project of my own. It's the first book that I'm fully writing that I haven't like. It's the first book I'm fully writing since Deadly Living, so almost 3 years now.
Oh wow.
So it's awesome. It's kickstarting a whole new line of Dauntless books that are going to be coming out. A whole new type. I can talk about that a little bit. Recently, in the last year, I have fallen in love with manga and anime. And I'm a sucker for black and white interior books. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's like clean action, like all that kind of stuff. So my goal is to start a line of black and white interior books, manga sized, at US size, and just kind of experiment with that. Like see how creative creators can get with that. On this next book, we brought in this amazing artist to do it. He's from Brazil. It looks awesome already. And we're pulling out all the stops for the variant artist, and all that kind of stuff. So next year is
That's
going to be a big
awesome.
year for us.
It sounds like it between new Kickstarter and that whole line launching. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, black and white isn't everybody's cup of tea, but including me, like I'm not the biggest fan of it all the time, but there are some stories that I love because they're black and white and because the black and white really enhanced the experience of that comic, that story.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I feel like there's certain artists, for example, Matt Battaglia, who does Ghost of the Carousel, one of our books.
Mm-hmm.
That book's in all black and white. And Matt has a style that is very reminiscent of Paul Pope. Did Batman Year 100, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I love his stuff in colors, but when I see a good book with tones and just grayscale and all that throughout the book, I get sold immediately as like the way it feels. So his next book with us is just like that, and it already looks amazing. We can't wait to announce it next year.
That's awesome. No, I'm super excited to see what it is, but I find it crazy because you're hyping up all these other amazing artists, but you also are great artists, as we've kind of seen a little bit on here, talk about your other stuff. And one of my favorite things that came up recently, which is when I, bothered you on Twitter about it, was your Glimpses of Heroes series that you've started.
Yeah, that was a fun week of just making art every single day.
That was daily? Like each of those you did in a day?
Yeah, 2
That's
to
insane.
4 hours a day.
That's insane. Like this was done in a day. That's insane.
Yeah,
that looks
was
so good.
2 hours and 50 minutes. Procreate tracks my time on every single one of them. It's the only reason I know about it.
And that's it. I couldn't. It could never be me. I don't have the patience for that or the talent.
So I try not to paint like this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told, I haven't painted like this in almost 6 years.
Oh wow.
But Brent Fisher, they are one of my closest comic book friends. They have been super supportive. We're actually working on tons of books together. They asked me. I offered to do a piece for their son, and I was just like, Brent said he loves Spider-Man. I was like, all right, I'm sold. So I wanted to make sure that I gave him something that was memorable, to say the least. So this is kind of my own flair. It's like the idea is that you're walking down New York City, right? It had just rained, the clouds are parting, sun's coming out, and you look down for like just a second, and you just happen to see Spider-Man swinging right behind you, like in Marvel's New York City. So that was the big goal for this kind of piece. And then the reaction to this was huge, and I didn't realize people, like my art that way. So I figured, why not do another one? So I followed that up with Silver Surfer, which is what really kicked off the series. And again, it's one of those like glimpse moments. It's like if you're not looking, you're missing it. And for me, Silver Surfer is always this contemplative, like thoughtful character. And I feel like coming from another world, he would always be, enamored with sunsets. Like he would fly all over the world, always see sunsets wherever they are. But New York City is always the, sunset he wants to see. So it's like you're riding the subway, you're coming into the city, and you just happen to look out the window and Silver Surfer's just flying there.
It reminds me. Great thing. Yeah, it reminds me of like those scenes that we see like in the older Spider-Man films, I think, or some other superhero movies where like the kid sees Spider-Man swinging by or sees Thor flying by, and they're like, "Look, Mom!" And then by a second, Mom looks, they're gone.
They're gone. Yeah, exactly. And that's what the kind of moments I want to capture. It's like you just happen to look out the window, or you happen to be doing something, and you catch one of your heroes doing something. Yeah. And it kind of, you bleed into that with the next one, which was like Elektra, Daredevil. And this one was a lot of fun because for me, for people who don't know, Hell's Kitchen is literally like 4 blocks. Like it's super tiny. It's not its own city or anything. It's like 4 to 10 blocks in New York City. But I always see it like their playground. Like it's Matt and Electra's
Mm.
playground to do what they want. And with the way Electra was grown up, I feel like um it's meditative for her to have this high risk. Like for her to be
Mhm.
balancing on a beam like across two buildings in the middle of New York. It's like almost a meditative moment. I love drawing rain, so I put her in the rain for that. But it was also this moment of like people are doing laundry and it's raining and they screwed up and someone's looking outside the window and they just see her scarf blowing in the wind, the costume blowing in the wind, just balancing like a ballerina, like on a tightrope.
Yeah.
And that was the ultimate goal with that one as well.
Yeah, I love how I don't know, it almost it this series to me it humanized all these characters, right? It makes the Silver Surfer seem more human. It gets Alexis Daredevil to seem way more human than sometimes we think she is because of what she's capable of, right?
Yeah.
I love seeing characters like these that you've chosen very humanized because we forget like just at their core that they're still human just like we are. Like even Silver Surfer with all this cosmic energy, he is still very much human at his core.
Yeah, and it's always the small moments. It's the moments that where they get to be themselves, their true selves, that I feel like make for like almost photographic like images.
Yeah,
This
like
one
this
seems to
one
be a
where it's
big
literally
favorite.
capturing the photo.
Yeah. So this one was a lot of fun. Originally I wasn't gonna do the whole phone. It was just gonna be like you're looking at a screenshot from the
Mm-hmm.
cell phone. Um, but the idea was originally going to be that it was like you're taking a photo of like Times Square version in Keystone City, and you just see kind of like the flash going through the whole crowd, and then eventually he passes your photo. And
Mm-hmm.
that was like he'd actually be moving too fast for that to actually work. Um, but the idea is I love Wally West. Wally is my Flash because that's
Mm-hmm.
who I grew up with, obviously, with the Justice League cartoon and comics in general for like 20 something years, 29
Yeah.
years. So Wally was always my Flash. And I think Wally's the kindest person in the DC universe. Like other
Mm-hmm.
than Superman, it's Wally, Superman, Dick Grayson, and Diana, nicest people in the DC universe. So I was like, my day job, I work as a videographer. I make videos, I make uh, all that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
there's, for those that know, a technique in that requires motion blur. But like if you're using lights, you can make paintings with lights and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I was taking a picture of like downtown Keystone and the flash went by, it would just be a light streak like in the middle of my photo, ruining the photo. So the idea behind this one was Wally knows he's going to do this, so he wants to
Mm-hmm.
make it memorable for like the half second shutter that is going on. He pauses and he just waves to the camera, like that's the whole thing. Um, so I had painted his whole background. I was going to do the original one, and I realized this is what I actually want to do. So if you look at the bottom there, obviously you can't see it here, but if you zoom in on the actual image, um, you can see my painting of my original background painting as the
Mm-hmm.
previously taken photo of the. So it's like they were taking the picture of Keystone, Wally went by, and then they were taking it again, and this is kind of like the whole aspect of it. But this ended up being my favorite of the bunch, just Wally and that childish reaction of like seeing the Flash.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that, you're absolutely right. Like Wally would intentionally slow down just to do something silly and give them a positive memory, even though he could just go by and be like, I don't care. Like he
Yeah,
can get
exactly.
by. And then this one, I love that you also mentioned Superman because this was the last one in this thread that you did.
Yes. This one was this was actually not supposed to be made. This one was because I messed up the one that I was gonna do
Oh
for
no.
yeah. And sometimes when I'm in an art rut, Superman's the only thing that gets me out of the art rut. So
Mm-hmm.
that's me drawing him just flying, or a little scribble here and there. Um, but ultimately, it's always Superman, always Clark that like gets me out of doing that. So hopefully, the one I was working on, I can finish and post. But this one, the simple idea is that like Superman just saved the day, and it's Amazing Spider-Man 2, and that last scene like where like Rhino's like terrorizing
Mm.
like the city, and that little boy, he pretends to be Spider-Man until Peter gets there. I
Yeah.
wanted to emulate that moment. It's like the little boy wants to be Superman, and Superman's there just offering a smile and a hand. And obviously, I had to make it feel like Jimmy Olsen was taking the picture because Jimmy would be there
Of
to
course,
do it.
yeah.
Sorry.
But your cat says I could be Superman too.
Exactly. But yeah, so that was the end. That was 5 days in a row of doing pieces like that on top of a couple of other stuff. It was a great experience because I don't think a lot of people get to see my artwork this way.
Mm.
So it also points people in my direction, which is great because I'm always taking commissions and cover commissions. So that was always fun.
I was gonna say you're making me like want to commission you to do one of these, but like with Supergirl, because I love Clark too, but Supergirl's a girl.
Oh, I have an idea for Kara. She's coming. She's coming.
Yes, I'm very excited because everybody has a different opinion on her, and how her character is, especially when they compare it to Clark. And so I'm like, oh, please don't get it wrong. It can be a lot of things, so just don't do the wrong one.
No, see, I think everybody has a misconception of characters like Supergirl, depending when they started reading Supergirl or watching
Mm,
Supergirl. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like if you, what's that movie? There's been like two movies where she shows up. And one's drawn like the Mike Turner art, and she's
Mm-hmm.
always kind of like aggressive when she shows up. So for a lot of people,
Yep.
she's overly aggressive, like authoritarian, like, which I think is completely wrong. I think Kara is a super fun, loving character. Like, if anything, she's the type of person that would bring a kid's truck full of ice cream if she could and just land it right there in front of them,
Oh yeah.
let them have free ice cream all day long.
Yeah, she'd do it just because she wanted to as well. Like
Yeah.
she's like, oh, they want ice cream. All right, I'm gonna go get ice cream. Be right back. And everybody's like, what car? No, you don't have to do that. And then next thing you know, she's brought the ice cream truck, maybe 3 ice cream trucks, and
Yeah,
she's
she would
also
have
paid the ice cream trucks
paid for all
herself.
of them. Yeah, I was just going to say
Yeah,
that.
she doesn't just bring them over and make them work. She's like, you're paid for. I got you all. Thank you so much. Like
Free ice cream. But yeah, I love Kara. So plans to do Kara. The one that I'm redoing is Dinah, Black Canary.
oh, okay,
Um,
yes,
because I love Dinah and Ollie so
yeah,
much, and I'm doing 2 separate ones for them, but I have to make sure they're right. Like, I love those characters
yeah.
to death.
They're so
Um,
good. Like they're great separately, but they're also so good together. And they're one of those couples that I feel like at one point people were like, "Oh, they shouldn't work," but they do. Like those two will always work. I don't
they
care
always work.
what ship you usually like. That ship works.
Yes, I love them, especially when they're done right. When they're done, where
Yeah.
like Ollie is making her smile and Ollie's making the jokes, and Dinah's there to be still protective but loving. Like, that's
Mhm.
the couple that I want.
Yeah.
I think they need to be. I think they're a staple as much as Clark and Lois.
I
Like,
agree.
and I'm a gigantic Superman fan. I think they're a staple. I think it's a shame DC does not do more with them together, um, especially
Yeah.
now.
Well,
Um,
it's like they tried to when Arrow was made, and then they butchered it, and that wasn't even real Oliver. I call
yeah,
Arrow Oliver rip off Batman. So
I loved. I watched 90% of the Arrowverse,
yeah,
which was, um, and I love Oliver in that show, but I also don't consider him Oliver from the comic books. Like, it's
yeah.
like alternate universe Oliver. I can't let him be. Well, I'm
Keep
never
them
gonna enjoy the
separate.
show. Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. Well, I'm excited to see them whenever they're finished, all that stuff. I'm super excited, especially with Black Canary with Ina, how I'm wondering what you do if you're gonna try to portray her sound in some way. So I don't want spoilers, but I'm just so interested to see how you do that.
Yeah, no, the only thing I'll say is, for me, Dinah's happiest moment is on the stage.
Yes,
Like,
that's true.
so that's how I'm building that whole piece around, is how is Dinah on the stage.
I love it.
Ollie's a little tricky. Ollie, I haven't figured out yet what I want to do, but
Mhm.
It has to be fun.
It might be one of those things where, you know, you might finish Dinah's and right at the end of it, you're like, oh, now I know what to do with all these.
Yeah, exactly. And then I've been asked to do Hellboy. I don't know how I'm going to do that. But Hellboy, Jeff Lemire's universe, like Black Hammer, like all that fun stuff. So my plan is to do like 3 days in a row for the next year. So like 3 a month. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm so excited to see it. I loved it. Like, again, the second I saw that, I was like, that is genius. I'm a sucker for taking superheroes and stripping them down to what makes them human or whatever their core element is. Like, I know like stories like Wonder Woman Dead Earth, which is a Black Label book a couple of years ago. That was so cool because, I mean, that was Diana, like the rawest you could ever make her. Like, I've never seen it done like that ever.
Yeah, and I love when stories do that too. Like, I know everyone's not a fan of Tom King, but Mr. Miracle does that, like really strips him down to like pure mental exhaustion and like what's it like being a superhero and a new god and being married all at once. So I'm always a big fan of those kind of stories. And I think when writers get a chance to do that, it looks good. So that's what my little take on it. It's my little take on the DC universe and the Marvel universe. So I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to drop with them, but
I love it. They should hire you because they're foolish not to. Like, you're doing the work for them. It's right there.
They're all comic book size. They can just grab it and print it.
See? There you go. There you go. Well, I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Marcus. Thank you for chatting with me all about Dauntless Stories and about glimpses of heroes. Tell us where we can find you. Where can we keep track of your posting? I know things are weird with social media right now, so we're just going to do the best can.
Yeah. So on Twitter, I'm at Marticus, MarTauCuss. Pretty much everywhere else, you can find me as Marcus Dauntless. So it's kind of the world I live in, especially because for a long time, I tried to separate myself from the Dauntless name just so I could build up that brand. But at this point, we're one and the same. So you can find me on Instagram, Marcus Dauntless, and then on Twitter at Marticus.
Awesome. Yeah. And those of you watching this later on, be sure go check them out. Make sure you're following Dauntless Stories on Twitter too. They do, again, this is just like the tip of the iceberg. Like, there's so much more you guys haven't seen yet if you haven't read any of the stories. So please go check them out. And those of you watching, make sure you rate, share, subscribe, whatever you do on YouTube nowadays. That's super cheesy stuff, but it helps us. And again, you know, giving those follows and supports to Marcus and Dauntless helps them as well. So do that. And otherwise, we will see you guys next time in the nerdy neighborhood.